The marmalade sandwiches are back on the menu. In one of the most warmly received announcements to come out of CinemaCon this year, StudioCanal officially confirmed that Paddington 4 is in active development, sending fans of the beloved franchise into a frenzy of excitement that swept social media within minutes of the news breaking. For a series that has consistently delivered some of the most heartfelt, charming, and genuinely funny family entertainment of the past decade, the confirmation that a fourth chapter is on its way feels less like a surprise and more like an inevitability that everyone had quietly been hoping for. The announcement came with little in the way of plot details, but that has done nothing to dampen the enthusiasm. The Paddington films have built a reputation so sterling and a fan base so devoted that the mere confirmation of another entry is enough to generate genuine cultural buzz. It is a franchise that has managed the rare feat of appealing equally to children discovering it for the first time and adults who find themselves unexpectedly moved by a small animated bear's unwavering belief in the decency of people. That is not an easy trick to pull off, and StudioCanal clearly knows it has something special on its hands that appreciate just how significant the arrival of Paddington 4 is. It helps to understand what this franchise has become. Across its 3 films to date, the Paddington series has earned more than $700 million at the worldwide box office, a staggering achievement for what began life as an adaptation of Michael Bond's classic children's books about a polite young bear who travels from darkest Peru to London armed with little more than a suitcase, a love of marmalade, and an indefatigable sense of optimism. The first film, released in 2014, introduced audiences to Paddington Brown and the warm, eccentric family who take him in, and it immediately announced itself as something quite different from the standard family blockbuster fare. Critics who might have expected a throwaway holiday crowd pleaser instead found a wittily scripted, beautifully crafted adventure with genuine emotional depth. The sequel, which arrived in 2018, took things even further, widely regarded by critics as one of the best sequels ever made, a genuinely extraordinary claim that the film arguably justified by earning a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes for a period that became the stuff of internet legend. Then came Paddington in Peru, which brought the franchise into a new chapter by returning its hero to his South American roots. The third film grossed $211 million worldwide, a number that comfortably demonstrated that audience appetite for Paddington's adventures had not dimmed, and that, with the right story, the series could continue to draw global audiences long after the novelty of the first film had worn off. One of the distinguishing features of the Paddington franchise has always been its ability to attract remarkable talent, not merely as a product of the film's success, but as a reflection of the genuine affection that actors, directors, and creatives seem to feel toward the material. The series has assembled a roster of performers that would be the envy of almost any franchise in Hollywood. The center of it all, of course, is Ben Whishaw, whose vocal performance as Paddington has become one of the most celebrated pieces of voice acting in recent memory. Whishaw brings to the role a quality that is almost impossible to manufacture, a sense of genuine goodness that never tips into saccharine naivety. His Paddington is curious, warm, occasionally flustered, and utterly, irreducibly decent. And Whishaw is expected to return for the fourth film, a piece of casting continuity that will be celebrated by fans around the world. The human heart of the franchise has always been the Brown family, with Hugh Bonneville playing the reliably put-upon but endlessly lovable Henry Brown. The role of his wife Mary, meanwhile, has an interesting history within the series. Sally Hawkins originated the character in the first 2 films, bringing her trademark combination of warmth and quiet eccentricity to a role that was crucial to establishing the emotional core of the story. When the third film was produced, Emily Mortimer stepped into the part, delivering a performance that helped Paddington in Peru maintain the domestic warmth that the series depends upon. Beyond the Brown family, the franchise has excelled at casting its villains and supporting players with equal care. Nicole Kidman delivered a gleefully over-the-top turn as the antagonist in the original film, while Hugh Grant, one of the finest comic performers of his generation, appeared in Paddington 2 as the flamboyant narcissistic actor Phoenix Buchanan, a role he has since described as one of his career favorites. Grant made a cameo reappearance as Buchanan in the third film, a detail that delighted audiences who had fallen in love with the character. Olivia Colman and Antonio Banderas have also graced the series, adding further luster to an already glittering ensemble. For those who need a refresher on where the story currently stands, Paddington in Peru took the franchise on its most ambitious geographical journey yet. The film followed Paddington and the Brown family as they traveled to South America, back to the very origins of the bear who had charmed his adopted city of London for a decade of screen time. The adventure led them deep into the Peruvian landscape and eventually to El Dorado, the legendary lost city, where they encountered bears native to that remarkable place. The journey was both an external adventure and an emotional homecoming of sorts, with the film exploring Paddington's Peruvian roots while affirming the bonds that tie him to his adopted London family. By the time the credits rolled, the Brown family and their ursine companion were heading back to London, a conclusion that neatly sets up a return to the familiar streets of Notting Hill, where so much of the franchise's warmth and humor has been rooted. While StudioCanal has been careful to keep plot details firmly under wraps, the conclusion of Paddington in Peru provides a fairly clear starting point for what the fourth film might explore. With Paddington and the Browns back in London, the expectation is that the new entry will return to the city that has served as the series' spiritual home. The bustling, multicultural, occasionally baffling metropolis that has always provided the perfect backdrop for Paddington's adventures in politeness and occasional inadvertent chaos. London as a setting offers the franchise a chance to reconnect with everything that made the first two films so beloved. The cramped terraced house on Windsor Gardens, the neighbors who have gradually come to accept that life with a bear next door is simply how things are now. The markets and museums and parks that have all, at one point or another, been subjected to the well-intentioned but occasionally catastrophic interventions of a young Peruvian bear trying his very best. The third film also introduced a new generation of bear characters from El Dorado, and it remains to be seen whether any of those characters will make their way to London for the fourth installment, a prospect that opens up intriguing storytelling possibilities. The Brown family dynamic will almost certainly continue to evolve, with the children growing older and the question of what Paddington's role within the family looks like as everyone matures, providing rich dramatic and comedic material. There's also the perennial question of who will be cast as the film's antagonist. One of the great pleasures of the Paddington franchise has been watching supremely talented actors throw themselves into the role of villain with evident glee. Following Nicole Kidman's camp menace and Hugh Grant's glorious vanity, the fourth film's baddie slot is one of the most coveted pieces of casting in British family filmmaking. Speculation will run rampant until a name is announced. What can audiences reliably expect from Paddington 4? Based on the evidence of the previous three films, quite a lot. The franchise has demonstrated a remarkable consistency of quality and tone, maintaining a delicate balance between broad physical comedy, sharp wit, genuine emotional resonance, and a worldview that is, without ever being preachy about it, fundamentally optimistic and humane. That is not a formula so much as a philosophy, and it is one that the creative teams behind these films have managed to translate to screen with impressive reliability. Ben Wishaw's return as the voice of Paddington is the single most important piece of continuity the film could offer, and if those expectations are confirmed, fans will feel an immediate sense of reassurance. His performance is the gravitational center around which everything else orbits, and the character simply would not be the same in different hands. Similarly, the Brown family's continued presence in the story will be essential. They're not merely a supporting backdrop to Paddington's adventures, but an equal part of the emotional equation, and the best moments of the franchise have always emerged from the interplay between the bear and his adopted relatives. Beyond the familiar faces, the franchise has also proven consistently adept at renewal, finding new stories to tell, new locations to explore, and new collaborators to bring on board without ever losing sight of what makes these films special. Whether that means a fresh villain of spectacular ridiculousness, a new corner of London to explore, or perhaps an unexpected international detour, audiences can be confident that the filmmakers will approach the material with the same care and craft that has made the series a benchmark for family entertainment. In an era of blockbuster franchises that can feel exhausting in their endless appetite for expansion, the Paddington series has maintained something rarer and more valuable: the sense that each new film is made by people who genuinely love the character and respect their audience. Paddington 4 is still in the early stages of development, but the announcement alone is enough to make fans feel something very specific: the kind of warm, spreading happiness that a good marmalade sandwich can produce on a cold London morning. And really, that is exactly what Paddington would have wanted.